The ER director wanted to turn the quietest nurse in the hospital into a joke. In front of doctors, residents, and security cameras, he left 6 critical patients under her care, laughing as if he had just handed her a guaranteed failure. But when the storm knocked out part of the hospital, the surgeons were trapped upstairs, and the monitors began dropping one by one. That head-down nurse showed a level of calm no one else had. In less than 1 hour, she saved 6 lives with techniques no civilian should have known. And what happened next silenced the entire hospital. Before we continue, welcome to Silent Badge's Stories. If you believe people should never judge a nurse by her silence, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. The next part of this story will show why the entire hospital went silent. Fine, Director Harlan Pike said, smiling at the cameras. Let the nurse handle them. The words landed like a slap. 6 stretchers stood in the ambulance bay of St. Gabriel Medical Center. 6 patients. 6 sets of alarms. 6 families screaming behind yellow tape while rain hammered the glass doors hard enough to shake them. Nobody laughed at first. Then Pike chuckled. Nurse Abigail Cross stood in the middle of the ER with her hands at her sides. Bright blue scrubs, wet shoes, brown hair cut short just below her ears. Green eyes lowered to the floor like she was trying to disappear into the tile. She was 33 years old, white American, 5'5". Lean in a way most people mistook for fragile. Her badge said RN, nothing else. Pike lifted both hands toward the crowd. You all heard Nurse Cross complain about flow, staffing, and triage protocol, he said. So let's see what brilliance looks like. Dr. Malcolm Reed stared at him. Harlan, this is not the time. It is exactly the time. Pike turned toward the security camera mounted over the charge desk. The whole board wants accountability. Let them watch. Abigail did not move. The 6 patients had arrived within 4 minutes of each other after a pileup on Interstate 82, a school van, a pickup, a fuel truck, 2 sedans, 1 motorcycle that no one could identify under the twisted metal. He pointed at Abigail. You have opinions, you have notes, you have complaints in triplicate. So go ahead, take command. A young resident whispered, Is he serious? Pike heard him. Dead serious. Abigail looked up. Her green eyes were calm. That was the first thing Dr. Reed noticed. Not brave, not angry. Calm. Like the storm was outside her, not inside her. Director Pike, Abigail said softly, we need to sort them by who dies first. Abigail turned to the team. Bay 1 gets the motorcyclist. Bay 2 gets the teenage girl. Bay 3 gets the chest trauma. Bay 4 gets the pregnant woman. Bay 5 gets the child. Bay 6 gets crush injury. No one moved. Pike clapped once. You heard her. Let's see the miracle. A nurse named Tessa blinked at Abigail. Who is lead? I am, Abigail said. The room changed by 1 degree. Not enough for everyone to understand. Enough for people with instincts to notice. Her voice had lost its softness. It came out flat and clean. The kind of voice that did not ask for permission because permission wasted time. Dr. Reed stepped closer. Abigail, I can help. You will help by keeping Pike out of the bays. Pike's smile vanished for half a second. Excuse me? Abigail looked at him for the first time. You assigned them to me. The entire charge desk went silent. A monitor screamed from Bay 1. The motorcyclist's breathing turned into a wet, strangled rasp. Abigail moved, not hurried, not panicked, fast in a way that seemed almost unfair. She crossed the ER, pulled gloves from the wall, snapped them on, and leaned over the motorcyclist. Name? Paramedic Ortiz answered from the doorway. Unknown. Male, early 20s, high-speed impact, helmet cracked. We lost the airway twice en route. Abigail checked his neck, checked his jaw, checked the way his chest lifted wrong. Get respiratory, now. They're upstairs, Tessa said. Power failure locked the stairwell doors on 3. Then get a bag and suction. A resident reached for a laryngoscope with shaking hands. Abigail stopped him. Not that way. He froze. What? Swelling is too advanced. You will waste the last minute he has. Pike appeared behind the glass wall of the bay. Nurse Cross, do not perform beyond scope. Abigail did not look at him. Then find someone with a wider scope in the next 30 seconds. No one answered. The motorcyclist's oxygen saturation dropped. 86, 82, 79. His fingers twitched against the rails. Abigail looked at Tessa. Hold his shoulders. Jimmy, monitor. Ortiz, keep the family out. Reed, either help me or step back. Dr. Reed swallowed. I'm here. Good. Then stop being afraid of your title. She opened the airway kit with one hand. The young resident whispered, How does she know where everything is? Tessa whispered back, She restocks every night. But that was not the answer. Abigail's hands changed. The same hands that trembled slightly when Pike mocked her at staff meetings now moved with terrible precision. No wasted reach, no searching, no second guess. The motorcyclist's monitor dropped again. 74. Abigail lowered her head close to the patient. Stay with me, she said. Not today. Her voice was not a nurse's comfort. It sounded like a command given in dust and rotor wash. She made the emergency airway with Reed assisting and Tessa holding steady. The bag inflated. The chest rose. The monitor climbed. 78. 84. 90. Someone behind the glass whispered, What did she just do? Pike stepped backward. Abigail taped the airway and looked at Reed. Bay 2. He stared at her. Move, she said. He moved. Bay 2 was already red. The teenage girl's name was Chloe Mercer. Her driver's license sat in a plastic bag on the counter. Her phone kept ringing with the word Mom lighting the cracked screen. The dressing on her thigh had failed. Blood pulsed under Tessa's hands. Femoral? Reed asked. High junctional bleed, Abigail said. One of the residents shook his head. We need vascular. We need pressure in the right place before she has no blood left to carry. The resident looked at Reed. Reed looked at Abigail. Pike barked from the doorway. Dr. Reed, you are not letting her run this. Reed turned slowly. She is the only one running anything. Another silence. Abigail pressed her weight down with both hands, not on the wound itself, but deep into the crease near the pelvis. Chloe's body jerked even under sedation. Sorry, sweetheart, Abigail murmured. Pain means you're still here. The monitor steadied by a thread. Tessa's eyes filled. Pressure's improving. Do not celebrate a pause, Abigail said. Get blood. Warm it. Not cold. She's already losing heat. The resident fumbled with the line. Abigail's eyes snapped to him. Look at me. He did. What is your name? Evan. Evan, breathe once, then do the task in front of you. He inhaled. The tremor in his hand softened. He placed the line. Dr. Reed watched Abigail talk him through it with no insult, no wasted praise, no panic. She turned fear into function. That was a skill. Not nursing school. Not civilian emergency medicine. Something else. The girl's phone rang again. Mom, Mom, Mom. Tessa looked at it and started crying. Abigail did not. Answer it, she said. What? Put it on speaker. Tell her Chloe is alive. Do not say stable, say alive. Tessa answered. A woman's voice broke through. Chloe? Chloe, baby? Tessa's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Abigail kept pressure with one hand and leaned toward the phone. Mrs. Mercer, this is Nurse Cross at St. Gabriel. Chloe is with us. She is alive. She is fighting. You need to come to the ER entrance, but do not drive fast in this storm. We need you alive, too. The mother sobbed. Is she going to die? Abigail looked at Chloe's face, then at the blood, then at the monitor. Not while I still have hands on her. Dr. Reed called from Bay 3. Pressure's coming up. A ripple moved through the ER. One patient breathing. One patient not bleeding out. One patient pulled back from a chest collapse by a doctor who had finally listened. 3 left. Pike had stopped smiling. Abigail looked at the clock. 21 minutes had passed. The storm punched the hospital again at 8:43 p.m. The lights went out for 3 full seconds. In a hospital, 3 seconds is enough time for every guilty person to hear their own heartbeat. Then emergency power returned in strips. Bay 1 came back first. Bay 2 flickered. Bay 3 flashed blue. Bay 4 stayed dark. The pregnant woman screamed from inside it. Abigail lifted her head. Who was in Bay 4? No one answered. That answer was worse than any words. She looked at Tessa. Stay with Chloe. Do not let go until vascular comes down or until your arms stop working. If your arms stop working, use your body weight. Tessa nodded, pale but steady. Abigail ran to Bay 4. The pregnant patient's name was Mara Ellison, 31 years old, 28 weeks pregnant. Her husband stood outside the curtain with rainwater dripping from his hair and terror pulling his face apart. Please, he said. Please, she's pregnant. Abigail entered the bay. Mara clutched the sides of the bed. Glass glittered in her hair like cruel confetti. A dark bruise crossed her abdomen. Her breathing was shallow. A resident stood at the foot of the bed, frozen over a monitor that kept rebooting. Abigail snapped her fingers once. Talk. The resident blinked. I can't get fetal monitoring back. Battery backup failed. Her pressure is low. She says the baby stopped moving. Mara turned her head toward Abigail. My baby. Abigail took her hand. I know. Save her. I am going to take care of both of you. Pike appeared at the curtain. Where is OB? Trapped between floors. Someone answered. Then transfer her. Abigail looked at the black rain hitting the ambulance bay doors. No ambulance gets out safely in this storm. Pike's voice cracked. You are not making that decision. I already did. Reed entered behind Pike. His white coat had blood on one sleeve. His face no longer carried the easy arrogance he wore during morning rounds. What do you need? He asked. Abigail pointed. Manual vitals, portable ultrasound if it has battery, warm fluids, and move her husband where she can see him. Pike snapped. Absolutely not. He'll interfere. Abigail turned on him. For the first time, anger showed. Not loud. Worse. Controlled. This woman may be fighting for 2 lives. If seeing her husband keeps her conscious, he stays. Pike opened his mouth. Reed stepped between them. Harlan, leave. Pike stared at him. You forget who signs your evaluations. Reed's voice lowered. And you forget there are cameras. Pike looked up at the black dome over the bay. The red recording light blinked. He stepped back. Mara's husband came in shaking. Abigail placed his hand near Mara's shoulder. Do not touch her abdomen. Do not panic in her face. Tell her something true. He sobbed. Mara, I'm here. That's good, Abigail said. Keep saying it. The portable ultrasound arrived with 19% battery. Abigail took it from the resident before he dropped it. Reed watched her angle the probe, find what she needed, and read a grainy image with frightening speed. There, she said. The room held its breath. A small flutter appeared. Baby is alive. Mother is still the patient in front of us. Seatbelt trauma can turn fast. Keep her warm. Repeat pressure every 2 minutes. If she crashes, call me before you call upstairs. The resident nodded too quickly. Abigail caught his sleeve. Slow nods mean you understood. Fast nods mean you are trying to escape fear. He swallowed and nodded again. Slow. A crash came from Bay 5. The child. Abigail was gone before anyone called her name. Bay 5 smelled like wet wool, antiseptic, and the copper edge of fear. The 8-year-old boy had been quiet when he arrived. That quiet had fooled the interns. Quiet children in trauma were never good. His name was Noah Bell. His mother had been taken to radiology with a broken hip and a concussion. His father was still on the highway, trapped in metal, status unknown. Noah lay under a warming blanket with his eyes half open. Jimmy, the ER tech, stood beside him. "Abigail," he said, voice tight. "He's fading." The monitor showed a pressure that made Reed curse under his breath. Abigail moved to the boy's side. "Noah." No response. She touched his jaw, checked his belly, checked his pupils, looked at the splinted arm, then at the bruise under his ribs. "Internal bleed?" Reed asked. "Maybe, but he is also cold, scared, and disappearing." Pike stood near the doorway now, less bold but still present. "You are making guesses," he said. Abigail did not turn. Medicine is pattern recognition under time pressure. That sounds rehearsed. It is lived. Reed looked at her. Abigail leaned close to Noah. "Hey, little man, I need you to do one job." Noah's eyelids trembled. "Blink if you hear me." A slow blink. Jimmy whispered, "Thank God." "No," Abigail said. "Thank Noah. He's doing the work." She looked at Reed. "He needs blood, warmth, and a surgeon. In that order if we cannot get all three." "Surgeons are still locked out." "Then we buy him time." Pike laughed once. It was ugly because it was scared. "You keep saying that like time is in a supply cabinet." Abigail finally turned. "Sometimes it is." She started issuing orders, not wild orders, not heroic nonsense. Practical decisions that layered small chances into a bridge. Warm blankets, blood products, pressure support, repeat checks, clear documentation. Every movement had a reason. The residents obeyed before they realized they were obeying. Noah's pressure crept upward. Abigail placed a hand on his hair. "Good job." Noah whispered something. She leaned down. "What was that?" "My mom. She's being treated." "Dad?" The room froze. No one had an answer. Abigail did. "People are working to bring him here." Noah closed his eyes. Jimmy wiped his face with his sleeve. Abigail stood. Bay 6. Bay 6 was the elderly woman. Her name was Dorothy Hale, 72, retired librarian, pinned under the dashboard of her sedan until firefighters cut her free. Dorothy's legs were swollen and tense. Her urine bag showed almost nothing. Her blood work had just posted with numbers heading in the wrong direction. Reed read them and went pale. "Crush syndrome." Abigail nodded. "Late recognition. We need to protect her kidneys and watch the legs." Pike stepped in again, using the doorway like a throne. "This patient is lower priority." Dorothy heard him, her eyes filled, but she smiled anyway. "I understand. I'm old." Abigail's head turned slowly. "No, ma'am." She walked to the foot of the bed and adjusted the blanket over Dorothy's legs with surprising gentleness. "You are not lower priority because you are old. You are a human being with a name. That is the priority." The ER went still. Dorothy cried without making a sound. Pike rolled his eyes. "Beautiful speech. We still have limited staff." Abigail looked over her shoulder. "Then stop wasting oxygen." A resident coughed into his mask to hide a laugh. Pike saw it. His face darkened. "You think this is funny?" "No," Abigail said. "I think you are." Every sound in the ER seemed to drop away. Pike took one step forward. Reed put a hand on his chest. "Don't." Pike stared at the hand like he could not believe a doctor had placed it there. Abigail returned to Dorothy. She guided the team through the immediate care. Fluids with careful monitoring, labs repeated, urine output watched, pain controlled, legs checked for worsening pressure. No miracle. No impossible cure. Just smart medicine before damage became irreversible. Dorothy reached for her hand. You were military, weren't you? Abigail froze. Only for half a second. Reed saw it. Tessa saw it. Pike saw it and smiled again because he thought he had found another weakness. Abigail gently squeezed Dorothy's fingers. Why do you ask? My husband was Air Force, Dorothy said. He stood the way you stand when you forget to hide it. A silence followed. Not the silence of shock. The silence of something buried, shifting under the floor. Abigail released her hand. Rest now, Mrs. Hale. Dorothy smiled through pain. You didn't answer. No, ma'am. You didn't have to. The clock over the charge desk read 9:12 p.m. 29 minutes since Pike had made his joke. 5 patients had been pulled away from the edge. 1 remained unstable. All 6 were alive. Then the hospital intercom crackled. Security to ER entrance. Security to ER entrance. A second voice broke in, panicked. Fire rescue inbound with 1 trapped driver from Interstate 82. Adult male. Severe trauma. ETA 2 minutes. Noah's father. The boy in Bay 5 opened his eyes as if he knew. Abigail looked toward the ambulance doors. Pike looked at the cameras. Reed looked at Abigail. For one strange second, the whole hospital seemed to wait for her. Then she said, Clear Bay 7. Pike snapped, There is no Bay 7. Abigail was already moving. There is now. They made Bay 7 out of a hallway. 2 portable screens. 1 rolling monitor. 1 supply cart. 1 stretcher wedged beneath the flickering exit sign near the ambulance entrance. Firefighters burst through the doors at 9:15 p.m., soaked in rain and road grit. The man on their stretcher was barely recognizable as a father, but Noah knew before anyone spoke. From Bay 5, a small voice cried, Dad? The sound almost ruined the room. The patient's name was Daniel Bell, 41. Driver's side crushed. Severe blood loss. Chest injury. Broken pelvis. Face gray under the oxygen mask. A firefighter shouted, We lost pulse twice during extrication. Pike turned to Reed. This one goes upstairs. Reed stared at him. Upstairs is still compromised. Then call transport. In this storm, Reed said, they won't make it to the driveway. Pike's jaw flexed. Abigail touched Daniel's wrist. Weak pulse, thready. There, then almost not. She looked once toward Bay 5. Noah was trying to sit up. Jimmy held him gently down. Abigail's face did not change, but something behind her eyes went far away. A desert road, a vehicle crushed under smoke, a voice calling for a father who never answered. She blinked once, returned. Reed, I need you with me. Evan, get pelvic stabilization. Tessa, blood. Jimmy, keep the boy from seeing what he does not need to see. Pike stepped closer. You are not in charge of this hospital. Abigail looked around. No one else spoke. Doctors, nurses, residents, techs, even paramedics. All waiting. She looked back at Pike. No, I am in charge of this hour. That sentence traveled. Through the charge desk, through the waiting room, through every hallway where staff had gathered under broken lights and storm noise. Pike knew it had traveled. He hated her for that. Daniel Bell's pressure collapsed. The hallway bay exploded into motion. Abigail controlled the chaos without raising her voice. Reed handled the chest injury. Evan secured what he could. Tessa hung blood with both hands moving fast. Jimmy stood in Bay 5, blocking Noah's view with his own body while whispering, Your dad is here. They're helping him. Your dad is here. Abigail kept one hand on Daniel's pulse. Stay, she said. The man did not answer. Your son is in the next bay. He is alive. If you can hear me, you stay. The monitor blipped. Weak, then stronger. Reed looked up. Did he respond to that? He responded to purpose, Abigail said. Use whatever keeps them fighting. Pike barked from behind them. That is not medical science. Abigail's hands kept moving. Neither is humiliation, but you seem committed to it. A nurse near the desk whispered, "Oh my." The faintest ripple of laughter moved through the staff. Not happy laughter, relief laughter. The kind that leaks out when terror loses 1 inch of ground. Pike heard it and flushed. Everyone back to work. No one looked at him. They were already working. At 9:27 p.m., the surgical stairwell reopened. 2 surgeons rushed down with OR nurses behind them, breathless and angry at the failed elevators. "What do we have?" the lead surgeon demanded. Reed started to answer, then stopped. He looked at Abigail. The surgeon followed his gaze. Abigail stood between 3 active bays and 1 hallway trauma. Bright blue scrubs stained at the knees. Short brown hair damp with sweat. Green eyes sharp under fluorescent light. She gave the report in under 40 seconds. 6 patients, 7 now. Airway secured in Bay 1. Vascular injury controlled in Bay 2. Chest decompression completed in Bay 3. Pregnant trauma monitored in Bay 4. Fetal heartbeat present. Pediatric trauma stabilized in Bay 5. Crush syndrome managed in Bay 6. Hallway trauma critical. Needs OR now. The surgeon stared. "Who gave you that report?" "I did." "I mean, who was coordinating?" "I was." Pike pushed forward. "Under my supervision." Every head turned to him. The lie was so ugly it barely had shape. Tessa's mouth fell open. Reed looked disgusted. Jimmy stopped whispering to Noah and stared through the curtain. Abigail did not defend herself. That was what made it worse. Pike took her silence as permission. "The situation was chaotic," he said. "I delegated operational pressure to available nursing staff while maintaining command oversight." Daniel Bell groaned. Abigail turned back to him. "Or now," she said. Morris nodded. "Agreed." Pike tried to place himself beside the stretcher for the camera angle. Morris snapped, "Move." He moved. Daniel rolled toward surgery. Noah called from Bay 5. "Dad?" Abigail stepped into his line of sight. "Your dad is going upstairs. That means he made it here alive." "Is he going to die?" "He is very hurt. But he heard about you. His heart got stronger when I told him you were here." Noah's lip trembled. "He heard me?" "I believe he did." The boy closed his eyes and cried quietly. Abigail adjusted his blanket. "You did your job too." "What job?" "You gave him a reason." Tessa turned away, crying openly now. Pike muttered, "This is becoming theatrical." Dorothy Hale called from Bay 6, voice weak but clear. "Director, hush." The ER froze. Then someone laughed. This time, nobody hit it. Pike's face turned a color Abigail had only seen in bad allergic reactions. The lead surgeon returned to Bay 5 after handing Daniel to the OR team. "Mr. Bell is on the table," Morris said. "We'll do everything we can." Then she looked at Abigail. "You saved us an hour we did not have." Abigail removed her gloves. "I bought pieces of one." Morris's eyes narrowed. "That phrase, where did you learn it?" Abigail looked down. Now the room listened differently. Reed stepped closer. He had heard enough, seen enough. The airway, the triage, the command voice, the way she created function out of failure, the way Dorothy recognized the posture. "Abigail," he said quietly, "what were you before this?" Pike seized the moment. "Yes," he said. "Let's clarify credentials before this hospital celebrates recklessness." Abigail threw the gloves into the bin. "I was a nurse before this." That is not what he asked. "I know." Pike smiled like a trap closing. "Then answer." Abigail looked toward the security camera, then toward the 6 bays. Every patient alive. Every monitor still singing. Not safe. Not done. Alive. She could have lied. She had lied by omission for 11 months at St. Gabriel. She had taken night shifts, swallowed insults, let residents call her quiet, let Pike call her difficult, let doctors assume her hands were steady because she lacked imagination. She had hidden because hiding felt like rest. But rest never lasted. The past always found a door. Tonight it came through 6 ambulance stretchers and 1 cruel joke. Before Abigail could speak, the ambulance bay doors opened again. This time no stretcher came through. 2 men entered in wet Air Force dress uniforms under dark coats. Behind them came a woman in a federal jacket with a sealed folder under one arm. The taller officer had silver hair and a face built by weather. The younger one carried himself like a man who had been searching for someone and hated how long it took. The ER went quiet for the wrong reason. Pike pointed at them. "This area is restricted." The older officer ignored him. His eyes found Abigail. For the first time that night, her face changed. Not fear, recognition, pain. The officer stopped 10 feet away. "Chief Cross." The words did not land loudly. They landed deeply. "Doctor," Morris looked at Abigail. Reed whispered, "Chief?" Pike blinked. "Chief what?" The younger officer answered without taking his eyes off her. "Chief Master Sergeant Abigail Cross, United States Air Force Pararescue. Call sign Sparrow." The ER did not gasp. It stopped breathing. Pike actually laughed once because his mind rejected the sentence. "That is impossible." The woman with the federal jacket opened the folder. "It is verified." Pike's smile twitched. "She is a registered nurse." "Yes," the woman said. "She is also the former senior medical rescue lead attached to the 212th Rescue Squadron. Multiple combat deployments. Silver Star. Airman's Medal. Classified rescue operations redacted by order of command." No one moved. The monitors sounded too loud. Tessa covered her mouth. Evan sat down hard on a stool. Reed looked at Abigail like the room had rearranged itself around her. Pike's voice sharpened. "I was not informed." Abigail finally spoke. "You were not entitled." The older officer stepped closer. "I am Colonel Nathan Vale. We came because your name triggered a federal medical review after tonight's camera feed hit the regional emergency network." Pike went pale. "Camera feed?" Dr. Morris turned slowly toward him. "You said the board wanted accountability." The federal woman looked at Pike. "They got it." Colonel Vale looked past Abigail to the 6 patients. "All alive?" Abigail swallowed. "For now. For now is what rescue people call victory before paperwork." A few Air Force personnel smiled faintly. Abigail did not. Pike tried one last time. Whatever her background, she performed beyond hospital authorization. "Dr." Morris snapped her head toward him. "You left 6 critical patients with 1 nurse as a joke. I delegated. You abandoned them." Pike's eyes darted toward the camera. The red light still blinked. The federal woman closed the folder. "Director Pike, your conduct tonight is now part of a state and federal review." He backed up half a step. "This is absurd." Dorothy Hale raised one shaky hand from Bay 6. "Put me down as a witness." Tessa laughed through tears. Noah whispered from Bay 5. "Me too." Abigail looked at the child. That almost broke her. Colonel Vale saw it. His voice softened. "Sparrow." She closed her eyes. No one at St. Gabriel had ever seen Abigail Cross close her eyes at work. Not during codes, not during death, not during Pike's insults. But the call sign did what blood and thunder could not. It pulled the past into the room. "Don't," she said. Vale nodded once. "All right, Abigail." Pike pointed at her with a shaking hand. "You deceived this hospital." Abigail opened her eyes. "No, I served it quietly." That sentence ended him more than any accusation could. The ER stayed silent. Dr. Reed stepped forward. "I owe you an apology." Abigail looked at him. "Yes." He nodded. "You'll get it. Later. Patients first." That broke the spell. The hospital moved again. Not under Pike. under her. Morris took Noah to imaging. Reed coordinated with surgery. Tessa stayed with Chloe. Evan checked Dorothy's labs without being told. Jimmy escorted families one by one through the safest path. Pike stood alone near the charge desk. For the first time since anyone at St. Gabriel could remember, nobody waited for him to speak. Colonel Vale stayed beside Abigail while she reviewed the board. "You always did hate being found," he said. "I was not hiding." "No?" She marked a note on Chloe's chart. "I was resting." Vale's expression softened. "Rest is allowed." "Not tonight." "No, not tonight." The federal woman approached. "Chief Cross, I need a preliminary statement." Abigail kept writing. "You need patient outcomes first." "It can wait." "Then wait." The woman almost smiled. "Yes, ma'am." Pike heard the ma'am. It cut him visibly. At 9:58 p.m., the first hour ended. The clock changed. 6 patients remained alive. Daniel Bell was still in surgery. Chloe Mercer was being prepped for vascular repair. The motorcyclist was ventilated and stable enough for CT. Mara Ellison's baby still had a heartbeat. Noah Bell squeezed a teddy bear someone found in pediatrics. Dorothy Hale asked for tea and threatened to haunt Pike if she did not get it. Abigail stood at the center board, bright blue scrubs stained, short brown hair tucked behind one ear, green eyes scanning every name. Reed came to her side. "What now?" he asked. Abigail looked at the 6 rooms, then at Pike, then at the camera still blinking above the charge desk. "Now," she said, "we find out who else he left to die before tonight." The words traveled farther than she meant them to, through the ER, through the hallway, into every stunned face watching from the doors. And that was when St. Gabriel Medical Center went completely silent. "Say that again," Harlan Pike said. Abigail did not turn. The ER had gone so quiet that every machine sounded louder than it should have. The ventilator in Bay 1, the pump beside Chloe Mercer, the fetal monitor in Bay 4, rain hitting the ambulance doors like fingers tapping glass. Colonel Thomas Vale looked at Pike as if he had finally found the shape of a threat he already suspected. Abigail kept her eyes on the patient board. "I said we find out who else he left to die before tonight." Pike stepped forward. "You are exhausted. You are making wild accusations in front of staff." "No," Abigail said. "I am making a clinical observation." His face tightened. "That is not clinical. It is when 6 patients survive because your protocol was ignored." Dr. Malcolm Reed stood near Bay 2 with Chloe Mercer's chart in his hand. The page trembled slightly. He had seen trauma, rage, grief, death, and families collapsing on tile. But he had never seen a room obey a nurse the way this room had obeyed Abigail Cross. She had earned it while everyone watched. The federal woman stepped closer. "My name is Special Agent Karen Sloan, Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Inspector General." Pike blinked once. "That is absurd." Agent Sloan held up her badge. "It usually is." The staff stared at the badge, then at Pike. Abigail finally looked at Sloan. "You came fast." "We were already nearby." "Why?" Sloan looked at Pike. "Because St. Gabriel has had 6 unusual deaths in 8 months. Nobody breathed. 6. The same number Pike had turned into a joke. Jimmy, the ER tech, whispered, "What deaths?" Sloan opened a thin folder. "Patients who arrived survivable, then deteriorated after delayed triage, missing supplies, or canceled consults." "That is a lie," Pike said. Agent Sloan did not react. 3 elderly patients, 2 veterans, 1 child. Abigail's hand stopped over the board. The child. Every person in the ER felt that one. Pike straightened his coat. "You have no authority to discuss confidential patient matters in my department." Sloan glanced around the room. "Your department is currently under federal review. My hospital board will hear about this. They already have." Pike opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Abigail turned fully now. Her bright blue scrubs were stained with rainwater, saline, and blood. Her short brown hair had come loose near one temple. Her green eyes looked older than 33. What was the child's name? Sloane hesitated. Pike barked. Do not answer that. Abigail did not look at him. What was the child's name? Sloane lowered her voice. Maddie Cole, 7 years old. Asthma attack. She waited 41 minutes for respiratory because the director had reassigned 2 therapists to a VIP fundraiser upstairs. Tessa covered her mouth. Dr. Reed shut his eyes. Jimmy whispered, I remember her. Abigail remembered the memo. Respiratory arrest complicated by delayed presentation. No deviation from standard care. No deviation. A phrase cowards used when a grave was easier than accountability. Pike lifted his hands. That case was reviewed. By whom? Abigail asked. Risk management. Your risk management. By qualified professionals. Who report to you? The silence deepened. Sloane looked at Abigail. You filed 5 anonymous safety alerts after that case. Pike turned sharply. You? Abigail's expression did not change. Yes. You sent those? Yes. You had no right. A child had no airway. The line struck the room like a bell. Pike stepped closer, voice dropping. You are an RN. You do not investigate directors. You do not audit physicians. You do not decide what this hospital is. Abigail took 1 step toward him. No. I decide what I can live with. Colonel Vale moved beside her, not in front. That mattered. He was not protecting her from Pike. He was making sure Pike understood she did not need protection. Agent Sloane's phone buzzed. She read the screen, then looked toward the ambulance doors. My team is coming in. Pike laughed once, high and brittle. For what? To preserve records. You will need a warrant. Sloane looked almost bored. We have one. 2 agents entered through the ambulance bay in dark raincoats. Behind them came a hospital compliance officer Abigail had seen twice in 6 months, and never once inside the ER. The woman's face was pale. Pike looked at her. Denise. The compliance officer would not meet his eyes. Agent Sloane handed her a copy of the warrant. Secure administration, billing, incident reporting, mortality review, and all internal video from tonight. Pike's voice turned sharp. Denise, call legal. Denise whispered. Legal is already here. 3 men in suits stood beyond the double doors. Not Pike's lawyers. Hospital counsel, board counsel. People who knew where the bodies were buried and had come to make sure the dirt did not cover them too. Abigail turned back to the board. Daniel Bell? Dr. Reed answered immediately. In surgery, massive internal bleeding. They started at 10:04. Chloe Mercer? Taken to vascular. Still hypotensive but alive. Motorcyclist? CT pending. Vent settings holding. Mara? OB has her. Baby's heartbeat remains present. Noah? Concussion. No bleed on first scan. Dorothy Hale? Jimmy appeared with a weak smile. She got tea. Dorothy's voice floated from Bay 6. And it tastes like mop water. For the first time all night, someone almost laughed. Almost. Then Pike spoke. Nurse Cross is not authorized to lead this department. She has no trauma command certification on file. No surgical privileges, no leadership appointment. Everything she did tonight will be reviewed for scope violations. Abigail nodded once. Good. Pike blinked. Good? Yes. Review everything. She pulled off her gloves and dropped them into the biohazard bin. Review the airway I cut because respiratory was trapped. Review the femoral bleed I controlled because the trauma surgeon was delayed. Review the decompression I performed because the patient had seconds. Review the crush protocol you did not have stocked. Review the pediatric shock response that saved Noah Bell because your staffing model left a child waiting behind adults. She pointed toward the security camera. Review every second. Pike's mouth tightened. You are very confident for someone with secrets. The room shifted again. Vale's face changed. Not much. Enough. Abigail saw it. Pike saw it too. He smiled slowly, sensing a weapon. Yes, that is what we should discuss next. The mystery of Abigail Cross. Dr. Reed frowned. Harlan, stop. No. This hospital just watched a nurse perform battlefield medicine she was never trained to perform. She refuses to explain where she learned it. A colonel walks in and calls her chief. Federal agents appear like she summoned them. Pike turned to the staff. Does none of that concern you? Nobody answered. Pike pointed at Abigail. You want transparency? Start with yourself. Abigail felt every eye land on her. The old instinct returned. Withdraw, deny, deflect, stay small, survive the room. It had worked for years. After the Air Force, after the last rescue, after the mountain, after the little girl she could not reach in time because the rotor wash had filled the canyon with dust and screaming. Stay small. Rest. But tonight 6 people were breathing because she had stopped doing that. Vale spoke softly. Abigail. She did not look at him. Pike smiled. There it is. Fear. Abigail looked up. No. Her voice was quiet. That is discipline. Then she turned to Agent Sloan. You need my service record. Sloan nodded. We already requested confirmation. Pike scoffed. Service record? Abigail faced the room. My legal name is Abigail Cross. Before I came to St. Gabriel, I served in the United States Air Force as a pararescue specialist. The words moved through the ER like weather. Pararescue. Most civilians did not understand it. Vale did. So did Reed. Enough for his face to drain. Abigail continued. I was a PJ. Combat search and rescue. Tactical medicine. Crash extraction. Mountain rescue. Hostage recovery support. Mass casualty evacuation. I spent 9 years bringing wounded people out of places where hospitals did not exist. Tessa whispered. Pararescue? Jimmy said. Like rescue soldiers? Vale corrected him without looking away from Abigail. Like the people sent when everyone else is lost. No one spoke after that. Pike tried to recover. That does not give you hospital authority. No, Abigail said. It gave me the skill to recognize when your authority was killing patients. Agent Sloan stepped in. Chief Cross, we will need a formal statement. You will get one after I check my patients. Yes, ma'am. Pike flinched at the ma'am. A call came from surgery. Reed answered on speaker. This is Reed. The surgical resident sounded breathless. Daniel Bell is alive. They found the bleed. He is critical, but stable. Across the room, Noah Bell looked up from his teddy bear. My dad? Everyone turned. Abigail walked to the boy, crouched carefully, and softened her voice. Your dad is still fighting. Noah's lower lip trembled. Is he winning? Abigail glanced toward Pike, then back at the child. Yes, she said. Tonight, he is winning. Noah hugged the teddy bear until its stitched eyes vanished under his chin. The room was not silent anymore. It was something worse for Pike. It was awake. By midnight, federal agents were sealing administration while the ER kept moving. Abigail checked every patient, adjusted Noah's neurochecks, and made Reed pull every mortality review from the last year. He did not argue. For the first time that night, a doctor looked more ashamed than offended. Before he could answer, Agent Sloan appeared. Chief Cross, Abigail glanced at her. I have patience. And I have a problem. What problem? Sloan held up a tablet. Internal video from tonight is missing. The air changed. Reed stepped closer. How? The camera feed over the charge desk was deleted from hospital servers at 10:12 p.m. Pike. The name did not need to be spoken. Abigail looked toward the administrative hall. Where is he? Sloane's jaw tightened. That is the second problem. Abigail was already moving. Sloane held up a tablet. The charge desk video was deleted at 10:12, but someone tried to wipe the backup too. Pike smiled too quickly. You cannot prove that. Maybe not from your server, Sloane said. But people who panic usually forget witnesses. A man stepped from the shadows near the elevators. Tall, silver-haired, perfectly calm. Hospital Board Chairman Arthur Whitcomb. Behind him came two attorneys and a woman Abigail recognized from the State Nursing Board. Whitcomb looked at Sloane. This has gone far enough. Sloane's expression went flat. Chairman Whitcomb, this is a federal investigation. And this hospital is still under board governance. He turned to Abigail. Nurse Cross, you are suspended pending review. Reed stepped forward. You cannot be serious. Whitcomb ignored him. Effective immediately. Badge and access card. The ER staff had begun gathering at the end of the hall. Tessa, Jimmy, two residents, a respiratory therapist who had finally gotten free from upstairs. Even Dorothy Hale's grandson, still wearing a visitor sticker. Abigail did not reach for her badge. On what grounds? Whitcomb's face showed practiced regret. Unauthorized invasive procedures, command disruption, and failure to disclose a military background relevant to mental fitness. There it was. The weapon. Pike looked pleased. Abigail felt the old canyon open under her feet. Mental fitness. The phrase had followed her out of the Air Force like a shadow, not because she had failed a test, because she had finally admitted she could still hear voices after rescues. The dying. The saved. The ones pulled into helicopters. The ones left behind because physics, weather, and blood loss did not care how hard she fought. Whitcomb continued. We cannot allow an unstable former combat operator to perform unsupervised care in a civilian ER. Jimmy said, Unstable? Tessa's voice shook with anger. She just saved 6 people. Whitcomb looked at her. Emotion is not evidence. Abigail almost laughed. That was exactly what corrupt men love to say after burying human beings under forms. Agent Sloane spoke. Chairman, I suggest you reconsider. I suggest you stay in your lane, Agent. The nursing board representative is here. Hospital counsel is here. We are removing a liability. Pike stepped forward. Abigail Cross, surrender your badge. The hall held its breath. Abigail looked down at the badge clipped to her scrubs. RN, nothing else. For 6 months, that small plastic card had been her shelter. Proof that she could be ordinary. Proof that she could take vitals, hang fluids, chart pain scores, and not think about aircraft alarms, smoke, broken wings, and bodies half buried in snow. Now Pike wanted it because he thought the badge was what made her powerful. He still did not understand. She unclipped it. Tessa whispered, No. Abigail held the badge out. Pike reached for it. Before his fingers touched it, a voice came from behind the crowd. Do not take that badge. Everyone turned. Noah Bell stood at the end of the hall in hospital socks, pale and shaking, one hand gripping his teddy bear, the other holding the rail of a rolling IV pole. Jimmy rushed toward him. Noah, buddy, you should be in bed. Noah did not move. You cannot fire her. Pike forced a soft smile. Young man, this is adult business. You joked about my dad. The words stopped Pike cold. Noah's voice trembled, but he kept going. I heard you. When we came in, you said let the nurse handle them. You laughed. Pike's smile vanished. That is not what happened. Noah pointed toward the ceiling. The camera saw it. Whitcomb said, The camera feed is unavailable. Noah looked at Abigail. Not that camera. Everyone stared. The boy lifted his teddy bear. My mom gave me this because Dad drives at night. It has a little camera inside, so she can check on me when I get scared. The hall went utterly still. Jimmy whispered, No way. Noah hugged the bear. It was recording when we came in. It saw him laughing. It saw her save us. Pike's face drained of color. Agent Sloan stepped toward Noah slowly, kindly. Noah, may I see it? The boy hesitated. Abigail crouched in front of him. You do not have to give anyone anything unless you feel safe. Noah looked into her green eyes. Will it help my dad? It might help the truth. He handed her the bear. Abigail handed it to Sloan. Sloan looked at Pike. Now we have video. Pike lunged. It was fast, not smart, but desperate. He grabbed for the bear in Sloan's hands. Abigail moved faster. One step, wrist control, pivot. Pike's arm twisted behind him before his shoes finished sliding on the polished floor. He hit the wall chest first with a sound that made every lawyer flinch. Abigail held him there with one hand. Not cruel, not angry. Exact. Pike gasped. You assaulted me. No, Abigail said. I stopped evidence tampering. Agent Sloan nodded to her agents. This time no one paused. They cuffed Pike in the records hallway while the whole hospital watched. Whitcomb's polished calm cracked. This is outrageous. Sloan turned to him. Chairman Whitcomb, you may want to call your attorney again, preferably one not already in this building. A scream came from the ER. Not fear, clinical panic. Bay 5, Noah's pressure is dropping. Abigail turned. The boy swayed. His eyes rolled. Jimmy caught him before he fell. Abigail ran. Noah's small body convulsed on the gurney in Bay 5. His monitor showed a heart rate too slow for the fear in the room. His pupils were unequal now. The first scan had missed something. Reed appeared at the doorway. What happened? Delayed bleed, Abigail said. Call neurosurgery. Now. They are still upstairs. Then call the OR and tell them a child dies if the wrong door stays locked. Tessa was already moving. Abigail leaned close to Noah. Stay with me. His lips moved. No sound. She saw another child for half a second. Not Noah. A girl in a red jacket under twisted mountain metal. Snow around her mouth. Rotor noise above. Abigail's gloved hands digging, digging, digging. But the rock had shifted, and command had ordered her out, because the slope was coming down. She had disobeyed for 70 seconds. It had not been enough. The memory hit hard enough to blur the room. Then Noah's monitor alarm screamed. Abigail blinked once. The past vanished. The patient remained. Hypertonic saline, she ordered. Head elevated. Prepare for controlled ventilation. Reed, get me neurosurgery on speaker. Reed did not hesitate this time. The phone connected after the third ring. A sleepy neurosurgeon snapped. This better be real. Abigail took the phone. 7-year-old male, post-MVC, initial CT negative, now bradycardic with unequal pupils and declining mental status. You have a delayed intracranial bleed until proven otherwise. Or now. I need imaging. You need a live child. Silence. Then the surgeon said, Bring him. The elevator doors at the end of the hall were still locked by the power fault. Abigail looked at Vale. Can your people open stairwell 3? Vale was already on the radio. Done. She looked at Jimmy. You carry lines. Tessa, airway. Reed, with me. They moved Noah through the corridor while federal agents held back administrators, lawyers, and anyone else who thought paperwork outranked blood flow. At the stairwell, the emergency lock clicked open. 2 security guards pulled the door wide. Abigail grabbed the front rail. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. The team carried Noah up 3 flights, step by step, line by line, breath by breath. Noah's heart rate dipped once. Abigail corrected ventilation. It dipped again. Reed reached for medication before she asked. By the time they reached the OR floor, the neurosurgeon was waiting in green scrubs, angry until he saw Noah's eyes. Then anger became speed. We will take him. Abigail held the gurney. "What is your name?" "Dr. Leland Morris." "Dr. Morris, his father is in surgery downstairs because Pike delayed trauma allocation. His mother is on the way through the storm. This child does not become another review memo." Morris stared at her, then nodded once. "He will not." They rolled Noah through the doors. Abigail stood outside the OR with her hands empty. That was always the worst part, the moment after the rescue. When the door closed and skill turned into waiting, Reed stood beside her. "You saw something," he said quietly. She wiped one hand on her scrub leg. "Yes." "Past?" "Yes." "You came back fast." "I had to." Reed nodded. "I am glad you did." For once, she did not argue. At 4:31 a.m., Dr. Morris called from surgery. Noah was out. The bleed had been evacuated. He was critical but stable. His mother Rachel broke down in the family room, and Abigail stayed beside her without pretending the night had been fair. Daniel Bell was still critical. Noah was 7. Brave should never have been required of either of them. At 5:00 a.m., the board tried to meet without her. Agent Sloan brought Abigail anyway. Denise from compliance broke first. She admitted Pike and Chairman Whitcomb had forced her to sign incomplete reviews, then handed over copies she had hidden for years. Whitcomb ordered security to remove Abigail. Security did not come. The guards were standing with Dorothy Hale, who had somehow reached the hallway in a wheelchair and was glaring at the board like a judge. Dr. Reed backed Abigail. Dr. Morris backed her. Tessa, Jimmy, respiratory, and the incoming day shift backed her too. Abigail looked at the board. Every death review reopens. Every staffing cut gets traced. Every nurse who was told to stay quiet gets interviewed without management present. One board member whispered, "This is impossible." "No," Abigail said. "Saving 6 patients in 1 hour was difficult. This is paperwork." By 6 a.m., St. Gabriel had become a different hospital. Not fixed, different. Federal agents occupied administration. The board chairman had been escorted to a separate room for questioning. Pike's name had been removed from the electronic command board. Someone covered his framed lobby portrait with a linen sheet after Dorothy threatened to throw pudding at it. Abigail returned to the ER. Daylight came gray through the rain-streaked windows. The 6 names remained on the board. Daniel Bell, critical but stable. Chloe Mercer, in vascular recovery. Aaron Blake, the motorcyclist. Ventilated stable. Mara Ellison. Baby alive. Mother stable. Noah Bell. Post-op. Critical but stable. Dorothy Hale. Loud, stable. Demanding realty. Abigail stared at the board for a long time. Vale came to stand beside her. "You did good." She shook her head. "They are not all out of danger." "That is not what I said." "I know. You still hate praise. It usually arrives before paperwork." He smiled faintly. "There she is." Abigail's throat tightened. "Why are you really here, Vale?" He looked toward the ambulance bay. Pike's hospital was flagged after Maddie Cole. One of her relatives was Air Force. He called people. People called me. Your anonymous alerts match language from PJ after-action formats. Abigail closed her eyes. "You recognize the writing." "I recognize the conscience. That sounds sentimental." "It is accurate." She looked at him. "You should have left me alone." "I did for 6 months. Not long enough." "No," Vale said. "Too long." The words landed gently and hurt anyway. At noon, Abigail gave her statement. She said her full name, her current role, and the truth Pike had tried to weaponize. She had been United States Air Force Pararescue, a Chief Master Sergeant, a leader of PJs. She had left because she had started remembering the dead before the living. Sloan asked if she regretted stepping in. Abigail answered before fear could speak. No. By evening, the news had reached the city. Hospital director arrested after ER scandal. 6 patients saved after alleged staffing stunt. Former Air Force pararescue nurse exposed corruption at St. Gabriel. Abigail hated every headline. Pike would hate them more. At 8:00 p.m., 24 hours after Pike had laughed at 6 stretchers, the ER gathered near the charge desk. Not officially. Nobody planned it. They just ended up there. Tessa stood with red eyes and fresh scrubs. Jimmy leaned against the counter. Reed came down from ICU. Dr. Morris arrived from surgery, respiratory, security, housekeeping. Even Denise stood in the back, still shaking, still present. Abigail looked at them. What? Jimmy cleared his throat. We thought someone should say something. About what? Tessa almost smiled. About the fact that the hospital is no longer on fire. It is absolutely still on fire. Less fire then. A few people laughed. Small, tired, real. Dr. Reed stepped forward. I want everyone to hear this from me. I failed this department. I let Pike make fear normal. I let nurses carry blame doctors should have shared. I let silence become policy. His voice cracked. I am sorry. And I am done being that kind of doctor. Tessa wiped her face. Jimmy nodded once. Reed turned to Abigail. You reminded us what command looks like. It is not a title. It is responsibility. Abigail looked uncomfortable. Do not make me a symbol. Dorothy's voice came from a wheelchair near the hall. Too late. Everyone turned. Dorothy lifted her paper cup. To the quiet nurse who scared the suits. Jimmy raised his coffee. Tessa raised a bottle of water. Reed raised nothing, then grabbed a tongue depressor from the counter and raised that. The ER followed. Abigail stared at them. Her first instinct was to walk away. Instead, she stayed. Not smiling exactly, but not hiding. Listen to me, she said. The room quieted. What happened last night cannot become a legend we tell so we feel better. 6 people almost died because this hospital learned to obey bad leadership. A story will not fix that. Applause will not fix it. Calling me a hero will not fix it. She looked from face to face. Protocols will. Staffing will. Training will. Speaking up will. Refusing illegal orders will. Protecting patients when it costs you something will. Tessa nodded. Reed lowered his tongue depressor. Abigail's voice softened. If you want to thank me, do not thank me. Change. A month later, St. Gabriel announced a new emergency safety program. 4 rules went above the charge desk. No patient waits unseen. No staff member is punished for raising safety concerns. No administrator can override clinical triage. No one is ever just a nurse. Abigail hated the last line. Dorothy Hale had mailed it in a frame. Nobody dared remove it. Noah Bell visited 2 months after the storm. He walked with a slight wobble and wore a superhero cape over his jacket. Daniel Bell came with him, thinner but alive, one hand resting on his son's shoulder. Rachel carried the teddy bear, repaired and camera-free. Noah gave it to Abigail. For your office. I do not have an office. You should. Daniel smiled. He insisted. Abigail crouched. Why do you want me to have it? Noah looked serious. So if people lie again, he can watch. Abigail took the bear. Then he will sit where he can see everything. The bear ended up on a shelf behind the charge desk. Jimmy named him Sergeant Buttons. Abigail objected. No one listened. 6 months later, the federal report named the failures, plainly. Unsafe staffing. Retaliation. Fraudulent mortality reviews. Evidence destruction. Administrative obstruction. It also named the 6 patients from the storm. All 6 survived. Not untouched, not magically healed, but alive. Pike pled guilty before trial after the teddy bear video became impossible to explain. Whitcomb lost his board seat. Maddie Cole's parents started a patient advocacy fund in their daughter's name. On the morning the guilty plea became public, Abigail found the ER quieter than usual. Not empty, focused. Tessa ran triage with confidence. Reed listened when a nurse corrected him. Jimmy had labeled every airway drawer in handwriting large enough to be seen from space. That evening, Abigail walked through the ER just before shift change. Bay 1 was clean. Bay 2 had a teenager with a sprained ankle pretending not to cry. Bay 3 held an elderly veteran with chest pain. Already seen, already monitored, already treated like his time mattered. Bay 4 was ready. Bay 5 had stickers on the wall because pediatrics overflowed often enough now that Abigail made them prepare for it. Bay 6 was empty, except for sunlight on the sheets. Dr. Reed approached with a chart. "Chief?" Abigail raised an eyebrow. He corrected himself. "Abigail." "Yes?" "New resident orientation starts Monday. I was hoping you would teach the first session." "On what?" "Priority." She glanced at him. "Medical priority or moral priority?" Reed smiled faintly. "I was hoping both." Abigail took the chart. "I will need 1 hour." Jimmy, passing by, muttered, "Apparently that's enough for her." Tessa laughed. Even Abigail let the corner of her mouth move. That night, after the shift ended, she sat alone in her car while rain began tapping the windshield. Not a storm this time. Just rain. For years, she had believed silence was safety. Silence after the Air Force. Silence after the mountain. Silence after every patient she could not save. Silence in St. Gabriel while Pike laughed, cut, buried, and lied. But silence had almost killed 6 people. Silence had already buried Maddie Cole. Silence was not peace. Sometimes silence was just fear, wearing a clean uniform. Abigail looked through the windshield at the ER entrance. Staff moved behind the glass. Nurses, doctors, techs, patients, families. Ordinary people standing between life and loss every hour of every day. No medals, no aircraft, no battlefield. Still a mission. She clipped her badge back onto her scrub top and stepped out into the rain. Inside, the charge desk was busy. Tessa waved her over. 3 ambulances inbound. Jimmy handed her gloves. Reed looked up from the board. "Abigail?" She took the marker. Her green eyes moved across the empty bays, the waiting rooms, the people ready to follow the right kind of command. "What do we have?" Tessa read the radio report. 2 chest pains, 1 fall, possible stroke. Abigail nodded. Bay 1, stroke. Bay 2 and 3, chest pain. Fall gets fast track unless vitals say otherwise. Everyone moved. No hesitation. No joke. No one looking to an administrator for permission to care. The hospital did not go silent this time. It came alive. And Abigail Cross, the quiet nurse Pike had tried to humiliate, finally understood the truth he had missed from the beginning. Power was not the title on the door. It was not the suit, the office, the board seat, or the authority to make people afraid. Power was a steady hand when someone could not breathe. Power was the courage to speak when silence was rewarded. Power was seeing 6 lives treated like a joke and refusing to laugh. That was why the ER followed her. Not because she had once jumped from aircraft into storms. Not because she had worn a uniform or carried a rank. They followed because, when the worst hour came, she chose patience over pride, truth over comfort, and responsibility over fear. Harlan Pike had left 6 patients with 1 nurse as a joke. 1 hour later, 6 people were alive. 1 day later, a corrupt hospital began to fall. 1 month later,